Okay, 1 second. Yeah, well, let me. Damn. Damn. I don't know if anybody's on the live. Got a snap. Yeah, let me show you. I had some crackers, cheese, and salami. Yummy. Crackers, cheese, and salami. Yummy. That's a quick little stuff. Where's the crack? Oh. Sorry, put the ASMR. And she's I'm hungry.
You know just how to keep me up. You know just how to keep me up.
Thanks to whoever like.
Have to wait. Girl, your man can wait. We top priority because we got real stuff to do. I know that's real. So what y'all trying to say? My man ain't got real obligation? No. Ladies, chill. I can get all y'all to y'all destination on time. I know I should have stayed in the bed. At this point, I should have just walked. Hold on. Why are we stopping? Right. I'm already late. Not tomorrow, you know. We just ran out of gas.
Ooh. Somebody's watching me. It's my anxiety that I want you. You would understand. Entonces, no entiendo.
Wait, what? Boy, how do we run out of gas when we was just at the gas station? Right. I gave you $5. Man, $5 ain't no money. You see how high gas is? You weren't saying that when I send you my money. Matter of fact, send me my money back. I would, but my phone just died. Lord, can it make it any worse? Yeah. Hey, this way we gonna get there on time. Man, I spoke too soon. You think? Hey, don't be mad at me. I'm not the one who got her stranded. Where y'all stop? Where y'all going? Little boy, push your own car. I'm out. Me too. All right, y'all can leave, but I'm still here too, right? Boy, please. Yeah, you wish. Well, y'all can at least give me 5 stars or something. Why you still here? Because I paid you to take me to my man, and that's what you gonna do. How? We ain't got no gas. You ain't gonna be able to push this car by yourself? Who said anything about me pushing a car? I did. See? That's where you're wrong at. You gonna give me to my man by any means necessary. Yeah, talking to me. Say what? Yes, ma'am. Oh, alright. That's what I thought. Now get the push. Just as they come for the rouge, you know this girl. Every step I take. Hey, y'all need a ride? Yeah, actually we do. You know what that sound like to me? A personal problem. Yeah, Katie, that's what I'm talking about. Keep pushing. Hello, babe. I'm on the way. She's like, never back into the flood.
That sounds like a personal problem. That's on.
You know what makes me feel pain? When a small content creators so much work into our videos and trying to make them so entertaining and get a minimum of 300 views, and then post a maximum of 500.
Please don't scroll.
Let's get a like, y'all. Let's get it 10 likes, okay? Like the stream. Like the stream.
Kali, ngapain sih?
Look at me lifting. Okay. Oh. Oh. I forgot, sorry. Cheers. Salami. Happen. Sorry, I was eating some crackers. Oh my god, oh, if you're still there. Hello, are you? Oh my god. If you're still there. Hello, are you? I'm gonna go get something to drink. Yeah, I am a little tired. I think I've been awake since like I can't see the time because I might accidentally call my mom, but like since I know before 10:30 because breakfast ends at 10:30 a.m. in McDonald's, so I've been awake since 10. I know before 10:30 because breakfast ends at 10:30 a.m. in McDonald's, so I've been awake since 10. When I'll be back, I'm gonna go get a soda. I forgot. When I'll be back, I'm gonna go get a soda. I forgot. You ready for the ASMR? Not sponsored. It's almost 2 a.m. Oh my god, it showed the face. You look. I can do the face ID. And yeah, pretty annoying that the list notification won't go away, so I'm like gonna delete that. Don't even use it in my real phone is set. If it would focus. It's at 49%. My like actual phone. This one is at 46%. I'm waiting for my blanket to dry. I have nothing better to do. I'll show you guys what's on my phone. Okay. So I have the gallery, which I can open because it has like that. The videos I post, the clips, stuff. Move, I don't even TikTok, what's up here? Shopping. So I have Walmart, Temu, Shein, Amazon, eBay, AliExpress, Lemon 8, Five Below. I don't know why Lemon 8 is in shopping, but we're not gonna talk about that. Mercury, I saw there. YouTube, games, Zepito, Roblox, Forever, I haven't used that. These random, I don't even know what they are. Oh, there. Post Party, PlayStation app, Webpad. I don't even know what this app is. Like I said, I don't know. Oh, this is a VTuber thingy. Okay. Gmail, Twitch, Ranmo, I'm broke. Look, I'm so broke. 23 cents. That's so sad. This I don't even use, so I'm gonna delete it. Delete. Shop, blah blah blah. And then entertainment, and that's pretty much it. I don't have nothing else. This is our normal basic app store. So, top free apps. Must have apps. And yeah. I here let the phone I'm streaming on charge more because I'm gonna leave it. So when I go to sleep, I here let the phone I'm streaming on charge more because I'm gonna leave it. Really bad headache. Okay, I'm gonna let it charge. Again, okay, where's charging? Okay, where's charging? Like to make me cry. ain't crying, bro. Send it to my mom, and I probably gonna see it. Most likely sleeping, but I know it's probably gonna make her cry. Blanket and get my dog. Like real. Oh. Okay, oh my god. It's so hot. Ah! Come on. Come on. Eat it. Eat it. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah, now you want to eat it? Eat it. Come on. Eat it. Eat it. Come on. girl, come on. Eat it, eat it, eat it. No, it's gonna blanket go cold. Eat it, eat it, eat it. Good girl. You know, go to sleep. It's very cold. But it's hot. Oh my Lord, dear Jesus. That's right. Much better. Hot blanket. I know. Oh my Lord, dear Jesus. Rebel, what are you doing? Come on. Come on. Get off it. What are you doing? Go to sleep. It's what you need to do. Go to bleep bop to sleep. Now. I don't have a thing to tell you. I think you my mother.
Today I'm going to be taking a look at all the new mutators. And if I go ahead and
What is going on? Honestly, the stone wheels are that it is car designs with a water themed car design. The update's been out for over half an hour and the servers were down. I think we're here for season 18. By the way, if you're not interested in the Rocket Pass and you want to see the tournament rewards, like every 1 in 60,000 single player in our ultra, and again, I'm in the Chromatic Cup, so I'm happy with that. This is deluxe, so this is a Chromatic Cup item. Not great. The Knighted Topper looks... I'm getting Crash Bandicoot vibes there, actually, but it looks very cool. I don't mind it. Disco Floor, Trail...
Today's story is about a group of internet gamers who played together for years. But one day, in the
Now connected to iPhone.
Between reality and fantasy suddenly blurred, and nobody could tell what was real and what was fake, until it was too late. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please adjust the like button's power seats in their car to a very uncomfortable position, and then rip out the fuse.
What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Just wanted to remind you guys before the video starts to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you end up enjoying the video. If you have any thoughts about the stories in this video, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. As one of my favorite things about doing this is reading your guys' comments on the stories therein. I know some people have been saying they've been getting a lot of ads recently. Unfortunately, YouTube recently changed the way they do their ads, where it automatically puts ads in certain periods of silence. So I don't really have too much control over when it does that. I'm sorry, guys, but that's just the way it is. Without further ado, though, guys, we'll just get right into the video, and I hope you guys enjoy the next 40 minutes or so of new True Scary Stories. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. When I was a teenager and an only child, I often didn't have a lot to do during the summer. We lived way out into the country. I can still picture the house in my mind, even though it's been decades since I last lived there. It was on a hill in a really, well, I guess hilly area. I'm really not sure how else to describe it. Both of my parents worked in town, and the town was about an hour and 15-minute drive away from our home. During summer break, they would be gone long before I woke up, and would not get back home until very late. That meant I spent a lot of time by myself during those times. All of the roads in the area were those gravel roads. From my house, it was about a half-hour walk before you got to the paved road. The other direction took you out further into the hills. I hadn't really explored that area very much. One day, I was supremely bored. We had a swimming pool in the backyard, but I was kind of tired of just swimming every day. We didn't have internet back then, and we didn't have cable on the television either. That far out, you might be lucky to get 5 channels, and they were almost always fuzzy as well. I did have a couple of video games, but there's only so much of a video game that you can play before you want to do something else. Around noon on one particular day, I decided I would follow the gravel road down the direction I had never been in before. I was curious as to what I might stumble across. It was weird walking alongside the road like that up and down all those hills. The forest was bulging on both sides of the road, but I didn't see any animals at all. It felt like I was really all alone out there. It was nice, but also a bit strange as well. Every time I heard a noise nearby, I would jump up just a little, expecting to see something. Eventually, I came up to a fork in the road. I hadn't come across any houses or driveways or anything like that at that point. I decided to take the right fork in the road. Much like the poem by Robert Frost, that made all the difference. I kept walking, and the vegetation was growing even thicker going in this direction. Many of the trees reached over the road as if reaching for each other. It was getting darker and darker thanks to the sheer thickness of them. That was even though it was only around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Eventually, I came to realize that this road was actually a driveway of some sort. It led straight to this house, the absolute strangest one I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, the house looked really old. It had a huge front yard, and it was completely overgrown with grass and weeds. But that was not the strange thing about it. There was carnival equipment all throughout the yard. It almost looked like a theme park out there. There were old, rusted carnival rides just sitting there. If you've ever seen really old, retired carnival places, you would know how utterly creepy this place was. The best way I could describe it is that it was like a graveyard for a carnival. The trees were so tall and everything was so dark in this area too. I don't know why, but as I was searching around the equipment, I glanced over at the house and I saw someone for a split moment peeking out at me from behind a curtain. It was a very strange-looking person. It nearly looked like they were dead or something. Quickly, they closed the curtain and slipped away. Needless to say, that was very creepy. I'd assumed the house was abandoned. I was curious, but I was far too creeped out to remain in the area. What decided it for me, though, was the sudden sound of glass breaking nearby. It freaked me out, and I ran out of the yard, running down the road. I didn't even know what I was running from, but I knew I was running for something. The journey back home was extremely scary. Even when I got to a much brighter area, I couldn't get the image of what I'd just seen out of my mind. I didn't end up telling my parents about it, because I knew they would have gotten angry that I'd been on someone else's property without their permission. I never went back there, but to this day I can still picture that creepy yard and that person staring out at me.
Sell your clothes with no selling fees on Depop. Sell sneakers everyone wants. Buy sneakers no one has. Buy secondhand brands for cheaper than retail. Buy, sell, welcome to Depop.
I went home and I cried a cry I have never cried in my life. I knew I had to go through pain, and that was easier than the pain of really what I was sitting on. I go over and I go into her office and I said, "Is it cancer?" First thing out of my mouth, and she says it is. I don't know why this is making me emotional. Look what you're doing to me, bringing all my emotion to the surface. The catalyst was getting out of a relationship that had drained me. As your friend, just being grateful to you and so proud of you in how you have stepped forward in talking about this. After it going on for months, I just stood up and I said, "Okay, let's go." And they went, "What do you mean?" I said, "You throw the first punch."
Hi everyone. For today's episode, I spoke with my brave and brilliant friend, Olivia Munn. We met over a decade ago and bonded over all things woo-woo. So crystals, astrology, we just got into deep, real conversation really quickly, which is kind of the way I like to do it. You probably know her as an actor and an activist. And if you're on social media, you'd also know her as the mom to adorable Malcolm and May. Because Olivia and I are close, I knew about her struggle with breast cancer in real time, but to hear her heartbreaking and inspiring story in the details that she shared in our conversation, it meant so much to me and made me admire her even more. And for any fans of the newsroom, we went there too. So anyway, I hope you find something to connect to in our chat, and thanks for joining us on Reclaiming. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Audible. Visit audible.com/reclaiming to find your next listen. Thank you to our sponsor, Reformation. Visit reformation.com to see why they're my go-to for stylish and sustainable fashion. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. I was so excited when you called.
Oh, thanks. I was thinking about, in having this chat, thinking about how we met.
Oh my gosh, so long ago.
I know, at the Vanity Fair Oscar party, and then you came over not that long after, and you brought me these lovely, it was like Jungian psychology books by Robert Johnson, I think.
He and she.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and we. You
Yes,
brought me
he, she,
three.
we. Yes.
He, she, we.
Yeah.
So, and I loved that. So I love like either books or candles.
When I walked into, I had not been, by that point, I had not been someone who was really into trigger warning crystals.
Yeah.
I feel like some people were like, and I approached it scientifically, not in a very, you like to use the word woo-woo. And I wasn't into that until then, really right around that time.
Oh.
And And when I went into your apartment in New York, there was crystals everywhere. And I was like, okay, we're going to get each other.
Right.
That's why the Robert A. Johnson books resonated with me, because he was a student of Carl Jung, who was a famous Swiss psychiatrist. So it was those things that kind of got me into understanding my choices in life and my own psyche. Then once I kind of understood a little bit more about myself, I wanted to expand and into a lot of different things that I was trying to do to try to heal myself for things I had no idea were broken. Crystals was really just a way to get into my own spirituality. And so yeah, when I walked into your apartment, I was like, okay, we're gonna have a shorthand, which we always have.
I know, which has been so nice.
When I came up to you, we talked about this later, but I had seen you. I know that you were doing a lot with bullying, and that made me so excited because I had this idea that never came to fruition.
Right.
But I thought a lot about myself when I was younger and getting bullied, because I was in a military family, so we moved around a lot, so constantly like the new kid. And there were times where if you looked on paper, it would seem like by the accolades I might have gotten in school that life was easy, but there was enough bullying that it really changed how I think I approached adulthood as well, and how I think back on those times. I had this idea that it was like there's Make-A-Wish, right, for these kids who are going through such unimaginable health issues, and they get to meet like their favorite athletes or celebrities and singers and actors, and it's such a wonderful organization. And I was like, man, I would love something for kids who are being bullied, because the mental health is just as important as physical health. And I thought, like, wouldn't that be great if there was an organization where like there's a kid who's being bullied at school every day and feels like there's no friends, and is sad every day. And then, their favorite celebrity was like Channing Tatum. And then all of a sudden Channing Tatum shows up. Yeah. And he's like in the cafeteria, he's like, I'm going to be hanging out with you all day long. And how that would just make an impact on a kid and their self-confidence. And so then, you have like your big celebrity who comes in, and you have like,
we could still do it. I mean, you can.
I would love it to do with you, but it's very
I know it's hard, because I remember when you told me that idea, and I loved it from that moment. You were one of the first people to just say yes to be involved in this anti-bullying campaign.
Which you wanted Emmy for, right?
Or the other one we were nominated, but that campaign was around really actually reclaiming theme, but around taking back the power from the names that you'd been called as a kid. And so I remember you were actually, Kelly Ripa did your intro, and it was something about being a new girl, being bullied for being a new girl in
for
school.
people not knowing you and all of a sudden giving you a label. And it's really interesting, because labels and how the world sees you, it's how you're treated. Right. So even if you think that's not who I am, it becomes a huge part of your identity. And at least for me, being really feisty and fighting back became my identity, because I was called like certain things when I got to that school. Specifically, I remember when I was 13, that's when the bullying happened. And I became really feisty and fought back a lot. Physically fighting. I grew up, I grew up doing martial arts.
Okay.
So, and my mom, I do credit this to being a cultural thing, being Asian. But a lot of other kids are taught this too. And then a lot of Asian kids are not taught this as well. But when I was really young, I was like second grade, and this girl on our street that we used to play with all the time, she was a lot older than us. She picked me up and then threw me down on the ground. And so I ran inside crying to my mom, and she had been washing dishes and watching through the window. And instead of comforting me, she looks at me and says, I don't put you in karate to just be thrown down. Get up and fight back. And I was like, well, now it's done. And she goes, go back out there and kick her. So I went back out and kicked her, because I actually was crying, and I said, my mom told me to do this, and I kicked her. But when I was 13, I was in a school, and it was a group of 5 girls, and they would just hound me. I was new to the school. I I made one friend. Her name was Corinne, who's still my best friend. And we had one class together, Corinne and I, but the rest of the time I was really on my own. And these girls would just find me and then push me out of the cafeteria, and I would go find steps outside the school to sit on and eat my lunch. And they would just find me, and they would really threaten to, like, they'd be like, we're going to beat you up. And they'd call me all these names. And 13 years old. So, the insults felt really damaging. Although if you look back as an adult, you'll be like, move
Right.
on. But at 13, it was
Of course, you're just
colossal.
forming your identity.
Yeah. And so it had gone on for a long time, and I never knew how to take on 5 at a time, even though I was really feisty, like I
Karate
said.
didn't teach you.
Well, yeah,
take on 5?
it actually
Okay.
did. But I'm one of 5 kids, and so I always had siblings and older siblings to
Uh-huh.
we would play fight and stuff like that at home, and sometimes really fight. But it's very intimidating when you have 5 kids coming up to you at once.
Yeah.
And especially when you're just 13 and have never really had like street fighting.
Right.
And so I remember after it going on for months, I just stood up and I said, okay, let's go. And they went, what do you mean? I said, you throw the first punch.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? I go, if you throw the first punch, I don't get in trouble, because that's what my mom had taught me. And then they were so surprised. And I remember putting down my lunch and then like tying my shoes, making sure they're tight. And I just was like, let's go. And they backed off.
Wow. I knew
Yeah.
you were a badass. I didn't know you
No.
were that badass, Olivia. But
Well, that quality has helped me in life, but also really hurt me in life too.
okay, in what way do you think?
I think that I'm quick to be protective of myself, but have not thought about the repercussions of how intense I would be or how much I would throw it back. For example, when I first got in the public eye, I was on this network called G4, which is a video gaming network and also about pop culture. And I was on this live daily show. And then also, this is before Twitter hadn't even started yet when I started.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And there were forums, and people would, of course, public eye, they criticize every little thing about you and call you names, and I would just throw it back. And the way that I learned how, and the way that my siblings would kind of clap for each other and like egg each other on and be like, that's the way you throw back to, to each other. And so I think that I definitely made a lot of missteps in that realm because I was,
I think in the new space of sort of social media, that allowed people who have a public platform to experience something in a very different way.
Yeah.
It's a sort of, I don't know if power is the right word, but I think when you have a certain size community there,
Yeah.
you have to be mindful, which you don't realize at first. Like, you have to be mindful, because if you go after someone, all your stands, right, will go after that person too. And
yes,
so
you're right.
and so that's the thing where I think it's interesting to see a technology like that bring change a whole aspect of kind of our culture,
Yeah.
our celebrity culture
Yeah.
that way.
And also
Um,
at that time, and the tail end of that was a period where Howard Stern ruled supreme. And so outrageousness was the key to success. I mean, that was
Yeah.
how the more outrageous you could be, and he got away with it. And even I remember watching his things and feeling very uncomfortable with how he was treating women, especially, and the way that he talked about women, the women who would come on, and the quote unquote games that they would play. It was nothing close to anything I had even thought of doing. But there was this collective consciousness that accepted outrageous conversation and quips and
Look where it's gotten us now.
I know. Well, I would say,
Like,
in the
politically, right?
well, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we have become desensitized as a society, but at the same time, there is this uprising of people on social media who are wanting justice for things and wanting to see the full picture. And I think that you have benefited from that as well. And it makes me feel so, as your friend, like so happy for you, because people on social media, especially, and like TikTok, and this younger generation really understand what you went through. Whereas back then, oh man, like it was so much judgment, especially from other adults who were like way older than you and a completely different generation. So a generation where they expected children to be more mature really early on, to understand, and there wasn't this understanding of how like our frontal lobe doesn't really develop until we're like in our mid to late 20s, and the choices we make stay with us for so long.
Really?
Yeah.
No, but what is so interesting to me is because I know you as all these wonderful things of kind and smart and funny and brave, and you're an advocate. And so I wasn't surprised at all when you were awarded this Impact Award last year. But what's interesting is to sort of think about, John gave this great speech, and I have a quote from it. I think it went viral on there, but he said that Olivia is constantly trying to keep me out of danger and keep me alive through a series of texts.
I had no idea. That was for him to show up like that and then read our private text.
But there were some good ones in there. He was like, "Baby, be so careful today. You could get monkeypox."
He was on his way to the Tom Ford store, famously known for their monkeypox. Yeah, and I had heard or read online about people going into stores and trying on clothes and getting monkeypox from the people who had tried it on previously, and it did scare me, and I wanted him to know.
But it's interesting because then there was the other one of you said, "Please be so careful today. So many crazy things could come out of nowhere." And John's like what? And you say, "Crazy cars."
Yeah, because I had read again something about a mom and their baby walking across the street in a stroller, and they were hit. And I thought, you have to be alert at all times.
Right.
There was a reason for every text.
No, I'm sure. And I've not spent too much time, but I've spent time with both of you, and I love you guys as a couple. And I always leave spending time with you with like a new book or having heard something interesting that one of you has said.
I always feel better leaving our conversation.
But it's interesting because I have been thinking about that, your Impact Award, and how funny that speech was. And so it's just interesting to hear like how you were in your youth of kind of this like karate Olivia, badass, going to stand up to the bullies, and then contrast that with the anxiety, right? That comes in, and the nervousness.
Oh man.
There. And were you anxious at the same time when you were younger, or is this something that came later in life?
I was anxious, but I didn't understand that it was anxiousness.
Yeah. I mean, you're younger than I am, but I don't know for you, but I know for me growing up, anxiety was not a word that was used. It was like, "Oh, my stomach hurts."
No, it was for me, it was called stubbornness. My mom would always say, "You're so stubborn," but that's because I wouldn't want to do things, or like being in big groups was difficult for me. Walking into a cafeteria I used to think it was just because, and it might be the genesis of it, because I still have, I don't go to concerts. There's a lot of people. It's a lot of system overload, like sensory overload. Everything is just like kind of going off for me. But the sound of silverware on linoleum trays that we had when we were in elementary school is like, I feel it's like nails on a chalkboard for me. Yeah. So I didn't know about the anxiety then, but it definitely came up when I was 28, 29, and it had started with being in the public eye with G4, and I think it was just compounding, month after month, year after year. An underlying part of who I am is fairness and unfairness. And I think
Me too.
Yeah.
Wait, are you also Libra rising?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm Libra rising. So
Okay,
I thought
me
you meant,
too.
and
Me
then
too.
Cancer. You're Leo. Yeah.
Right. But I'm right on the cusp of Cancer and Leo.
Yeah.
So in Libra justice.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. The scales of justice. So that's really big for me. And that's why things like being called names that I definitely was not was really difficult for me, and almost just whatever that Libra rising justice for all and fairness is not okay. It just took a deeper root inside of me because I was experiencing something that was really unfair. And, you know, going back to the question of like, how did that feistiness like hurt me as an adult? There's one thing I realized through this big journey that I had, and to try to heal myself. And what I realized was, because of how I grew up and different things that had happened to me, and I had a really tumultuous upbringing. And so
that in Tokyo?
Yeah, I grew up in Tokyo because the military, and so things were really black and white for me, and I would make decisions without thinking them through enough. Like I just was like, this is wrong, this is right, and I would never really be able to see the gray.
Yeah,
And
nuance isn't something like I don't know that a lot of young people have
but
nuance, but for you felt like it was a more demarcated than
I was. Here's a really great example of how it affected me in my adult life. There were other things that happened on this movie set personally to me that was really not okay, and it was so traumatic that I had to file complaints with the studio, and there's a lot of other little things that go along with it, but it got to this place where I was offered a lot of money, 7 figures, to accept, I guess, their apology and them taking acknowledgement of it, but it came along with an NDA. And not that I would ever have talked about it truly, because I wanted to move past it all. And that's why I don't want to talk about the things and the specific things that happened in that situation. But I said, I'm not signing an NDA. And they said, you have to. And I just felt that it was so wrong. And at this time, specifically, this was like in the beginning of the Me Too Time's Up.
The 2.0, right?
Yeah,
so the
period.
online, right? Because Tarana Burke started like 10 years prior, right? So
she
the
started,
online
so
version.
this was like the reckoning,
Right.
the Harvey Weinstein reckoning that began it all, okay? This was that time period. And this is when people were targeting anyone who signed an NDA, saying, oh, you only did it for the money. So I was afraid,
right,
that my voice in speaking up would be would just reverse any kind of validity to my voice. And I was concerned that they would leak it out. I was concerned that the studio, in an effort to diminish my voice, would leak out that I had signed an NDA for money. And I was in that meeting. The lawyers said, take some time to think about it. We'll step outside. And I turned to my lawyer and I said, I'm not taking it. And so I told my lawyer, I said, I'm just not going to do it. I want to say no now. And he's like, let's think about it. I said, I want to say no now. And that comes into the feistiness of not thinking things through and being so upset and frustrated that this would be the offer to me. I did not think about negotiating. I did not think about anything besides how disrespectful that was. So when they came in, I said to my lawyer, and I want to say it. And he was like, well, let it be. And I was like, I want to say it. And I remember looking at them in the eyes, and there was 3 people. One had fallen asleep. And so I'm like, so clearly you take this very seriously. But the person who said to me, like, this is a lot of money, and they didn't say it in the kind way that, I'm actually saying now. It was disrespectful. It was like, hey, this is a lot of money, right? You'd be crazy not to take this. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Just sign it. And I said to him, I know this is a lot of money to you, but it is not a lot of money to me to lose my voice. And And we walked out of there, and I remember feeling so proud when I walked out. Yeah, so proud of myself. And shortly after that, California made NDAs illegal. And I was like, oh, what? Oh my gosh. And look, was it the right thing to do? And do the people in my life think that I did the right thing and are proud of me for that? Yes. But I wish that it's not that I wouldn't have ended up with the same decision, right? It's that I made that decision based on anger. And that is something that I had to learn how to rein in and use for my benefit. But the only time I've realized that I've benefited from it is when I have taken the time to really think about things and digest it and talk it out.
Was that experience what led you into kind of diving deeper into your healing work, or was that a result that you felt you could sort of stand behind your voice in that way, was a result of having done the personal work?
The catalyst was getting out of a relationship that had drained me and left me just really it's hard. I don't know if there's a word to describe what that relationship was like. It was without a doubt the hardest period of my life, being in that. And that's where the other thing comes in. So being feisty and learning that early on, that it can, like, standing up to a group of people who are attacking you daily, like these 5 girls were when I was 13. It taught me how to stand up and fight for myself. So that was great. But then when you look at my family life, I felt really trapped in this really tumultuous family dynamic. And so I knew that my friends and people in my life saw me as somebody that would fight back. And I had no idea, I truly had no idea that I could be manipulated and hurt that way, that I wouldn't just get out of something that was dangerous to my psyche.
So many women, I think, find themselves in different levels of relationships that are everything from psychologically and emotionally abusive to physically abusive, and I think find it hard to leave. And I think people talk more now about attachment styles and stuff. And so I look back on some of my relationships during what I call my dark decade. So kind of in between 98, graduate school, whatever, and my first person essay at Vanity Fair in 2014. And I think I look at it, and maybe it's a story I tell myself, but I think about that the pain I was in staying in relationships with people who didn't value me, who talked to me a certain way that I allowed and accepted and kept going back for more. And I look at it and I think I was in a deeper pain, and experiencing the pain in the relationship was actually easier. Like I knew I had to go through pain, and that was easier than the pain of really what I was sitting on, of both not only my experiences in 98, but whatever, all those experiences before it that led to all of that. And so do you feel like, does that resonate at all, or something different?
I only had healthy relationships.
Okay.
And
Lucky
then,
bitch.
well, that one made up for all of it. It was a bad period of my life. And what I actually realized that I really want to teach my children and any friends of mine is that, when they say, like, oh, just go on the date, like, you never know, like, you might like them, you'll at least learn what you don't like. I think for some people who are, like, subconsciously vulnerable, which is what I think I was, because I had no idea I was, like, this vulnerable to anything that had happened to me post that first date, is that if you feel in your gut something's not right, then don't do that first date or get out right away, because one date could take years off of your life. Not just the period that you're with the person, but if you're lucky enough to get out, the years healing yourself afterwards. In that particular situation, I had a therapist who I really loved, and I know that she cared about me, or at least I thought she did. And I would constantly, from the very beginning, say, I don't know about this. I don't think this is the right, I want to get, and then it got worse and worse. I'd be calling her crying and be like, I gotta get out. And I was like, help me get out. Like, help me, like, wow. Like, and this is shocking to people, but she encouraged me to stay. She thought that, my quote unquote picker was off. And she would look at it as like, this person on paper looked great. And when there was couples therapy, they knew how to present the right way. So then the stories I would tell seemed unbelievable.
Thanks so much to Audible, our presenting sponsor. This year, why not let Audible expand your listening? Explore over 1 million audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive Audible originals that'll inspire and motivate you. Just open the app and tap into your well-being with advice and insight from leading influencers, experts, and professionals. You'll find titles that enrich your life, relax you, and the ones I like best, titles that make you laugh. Whatever your focus or interest, there's a listen for it on Audible. Ultimately, it's all about starting good habits. Making a positive change is the best goal you can make for yourself, and Audible can help. There's so much opportunity and more to imagine when you listen. Let Audible help you reach the goals you set for yourself. Start listening today when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/reclaiming. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Reformation. I want to take a second to talk about one of my favorite clothing brands, Reformation. You've probably seen Reformation on Instagram or at a wedding. They make the best guesting dresses. But if you're like me, you may have thought that's all they do. Well, you're in for a pleasant surprise. Last year, they worked with yours truly and Vote.org on a campaign to empower voters to take part in the democratic process and show off their workwear. From doing the campaign and getting to know the brand even better, I love their sweaters, blouses, workwear, shoes, and bags. But most important, I love how confident I feel in their stuff. Plus, it really holds up since they make everything with super high quality, sustainable materials. Reformation is also a brand that uses their growing platform to do good in the world, and especially in the sustainable fashion space. As they say, being naked is the #1 most sustainable option. Reformation is #2. If you're looking for clothes you want to feel great in and feel better about, head to reformation.com. I think what's interesting to me is to just think about how you have a strong sense of self. You lost yourself in this relationship. What's so interesting to me is because I think this is in a short period of time, you were able to, it may have felt like forever to you and may have seemed near impossible, but you actually stepped into a healing mode and found yourself again in what I think is like a very powerful and quick way, in a really, and that's one of the things that I admire about you is that that you have a focus. And I think that's that's the good side of the black and white, the good side of the kind of the fierceness, the going in and it's a decisiveness.
Yeah.
And
well, I think from that experience, realizing that I got to go with my gut and I got to be decisive with some things, not to be too decisive if it's anger based,
right,
or unfairness based. But if it's coming from a place where I want to survive and I realize that I'm not happy, and that days and weeks and months go by of unhappiness and fear.
I think we've talked about this before, of just you don't always know what's going on behind the curtain, especially for public people where we think we know everything, and I, as your friend, I watched you. I remember when you told me about that you had cancer. I remember when you told me. I was in the parking garage. I was in my car. So I remember that, but I don't remember how you found out.
Yeah. I found out after having done all the right things that we as women are told to do. If you have dense breasts, get an ultrasound, get your mammogram done. Genetic testing is amazing and has helped save so many people's lives. I did genetic testing. I remember getting the results from my doctor. She said, you're clear on everything, BRCA and all the other cancer genes, you're clear. And my doctor, Dr. Thais Alibadi, she has been a big advocate of the breast cancer lifetime risk assessment test, which is just an online test. It's free, and you just answer some questions like, how old are you when you had your first period? How old are you when you had your first baby? Have you ever been pregnant? Is there any cancer in your family? And anything above 20% is considered high risk. And I scored 37.3%.
Wow.
So she said, go get an MRI. So I went and got the MRI, and I remember the radiologist saying to me, wait, why are you here? You're too young to get an MRI for your breast. And I said, well, my doctor did the lifetime risk assessment test, and he was surprised. He was like, I haven't heard that in a long time. And I said, well, I scored this. And he said, okay. So I do the MRI, and he calls me that same day, and he said, we found something. You need to go get an ultrasound to get it checked. So when I get the ultrasound, the radiologist is taking some time. And finally I said, can you just tell me what you're seeing? And she said, well, I see the one from the MRI, but now I'm seeing two more. And she said, it's concerning because of the shapes, because, anything irregular is a concern. She said, the other thing that's concerning is when they look at the breast, they divide it into quadrants. Imagine putting a cross right through it. And it's not atypical to have multiple tumors if it's cancer in one quadrant, but mine were now in two different quadrants. So they got me in right away the next day for a biopsy. And then it was just 3 days later. I went in on Friday and I found out Tuesday. And my doctor made me come in, and I actually just I just gone to see her. So I was like, do I really? I was like, I was over the hill, like in Studio City. She's in Beverly Hills. I was like, oh man.
People who don't know LA watch the Californians.
Oh my God.
Right?
I was like, I gotta go over Laurel Canyon, and it's not the time to do this. And it was like 4
and how
p.m.
old is Malcolm at this point?
He just turned 1.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So I go over and I go into her office and I said, is it cancer? It's the first thing out of my mouth. And she says it is. And then I'm, off to the races, and a million meetings with all the different surgeons and oncologists and reconstructive surgeons to try to find my team. And
so you knew right away you'd have reconstructive surgery, or just
my doctor, who I'm very close with, she said, you should do a double mastectomy. She said, you're too young to have it in this many areas. And she said, if you have it this much in one breast, I guarantee it's in the left breast. And when I was talking to different doctors, they said, no, that's like so rare. You're not going to have bilateral breast cancer. No, don't. And I said, well, is it rare to have it in multi-quadrants? And he said, they're like, yeah, but no, that's even crazier to have it bilateral. And when I saw my doctor, the surgeon, Dr. Armando Giuliano at Cedars, he would be my surgical oncologist. He said, let me get my top radiologist here at Cedars and have them look at your original MRI. And he called and he said, we do see something in your left breast. Let's go get a biopsy for that. So I did an MRI biopsy on it. That came back as cancer as well.
Wow.
And it was very evident at that point that I need to do a double mastectomy because I didn't know where another one would pop up. And also, if I only had one breast, it would create a lot of symmetry complications and be harder for me to disguise it if I wanted to, because at that point I had no idea that I would speak up about this at all. In fact, when I found out, I was like, I'm not telling anybody. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody say anything. I said to John, don't say anything.
Yeah.
It's not because I was embarrassed or ashamed. It was because I didn't want to get this influx of calls
Yeah.
from people asking me if I'm okay, or I couldn't deal with other people's emotions.
Do you think, was there any part of you that also felt that in not telling people, it sort of, that it almost, it could then just turn out to be a nightmare, that it sort of makes it more real when you concretize it, telling other people? Or did you?
No, I didn't know
No,
that
it's
because
just- okay.
it's very real when it happens.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
dad's he just retired from being a radiation oncologist.
Yeah, I know. When you told me, you were like, if you need anything, you were so sweet. You kept offering that.
He's
Yeah.
an amazing doctor. He just retired at 81, but he's
Incredible.
well, it's interesting because I grew up really, I mean, I was sort of, I'm like, I was a naughty kid. But I mean, I used to sort of snoop around my dad's office and find all these slides of tumors and things, which is not a good thing to do. When you're a kid, you don't really understand, whatever. That's for another therapy session. But what I was going to say is that I wonder if, because they started to find, like, people find cancer so much earlier today, if you think that's at all why they thought, oh no, it's so rare.
Well, I think they're finding it earlier because for some reason people are getting cancer younger and younger.
Right. Right. So you decided to do the double mastectomy. I mean, what was that like, kind of going in? I mean, watching them, did they mark up your breast? And did you, I mean, I don't know if it's too personal, but like, did you take like photos or any sort of a ritual or something before of like saying goodbye to what was there?
I was really naive about what a double mastectomy would be and what it would look like. I really thought that it was like getting an augmentation. And it really wasn't until so many people, would later find out about my breast cancer and friends who were trying to lighten it or probably make me feel good about it. They're like, well, you got new boobs. And, I did not have any rituals. I'm not that kind of person to do like rituals about things like that. I talked about this before, but I only cried twice during the 10 months that I kept it private. I think I've cried many times since just because of the outpouring of love and support. But at that time, the time I cried was right before going into surgery. Again, not thinking about what the breast would look like, just worried about my son. Like, oh man, like what happens? What could, like, there's anything. And actually my surgery went for 10 hours, and that's a lot longer than it was supposed to go for. And it's because I started bleeding a lot. And so they had to stop the bleeding, and
John and your family must have been so panicked.
Yeah, my best friend Corrine was there.
Okay.
She stayed. It was her and John that were at the hospital. And when I woke up, John had pictures of Malcolm there, and Malcolm had drawn scribble marks everywhere on these papers, and he had all these, all over, the hospital room, and just saying like, "I'm so proud of you, mommy," and just things like that were just so sweet. And so the second big cry I had was the week after my double mastectomy, and I was going in for my 1 week checkup, and I had to get undressed, and I was looking in the mirror, and I had these things called expanders in, and some people do direct to implant double mastectomies. It means you do the double mastectomy, and then they put the implants in right then. But Dr. Oringer smartly suggests to do expanders if you can. It puts on another surgery, but it allows your body to heal so you can see what size you want. And I really wanted to go as small as possible because a breast reconstruction with a double mastectomy, they're going to look more fake. And just because of the anatomy of all of it and what has to happen. So I'm looking in the mirror, and expanders in clothing, you can't really tell, but like looking at them, they had like more like squared off edges at points, and they were sat up really high. And oh, I still remember that feeling. I just was like, I was in shock. I didn't say anything. And he was looking, he's like, you're healing incredible. This is great. And I just remember hearing the word incredible and thinking, oh my God, like what is better than incredible? So this is it. And it wasn't it. And that's not what he was saying, but that's what shocked me. And I didn't know how, that's when it all came crashing down of like, oh, what I had gone through. And I didn't know what I would look like afterwards. And at that point, I hadn't decided to talk publicly about it. So I was just thinking, oh, so many people are going to be saying I had a bad boob job and they're going to be tearing me down. And there's going to be so many TikTok plastic surgeons being like, this is what she's done. And this is how it was botched. And I went home and I cried a cry I had never cried in my life. It wasn't a superficial thing. And it wasn't based on an identity I had. I think I realized I had gone through something, and now I felt like I had gone through something and somebody put me back the wrong way. And I thought, oh man, and honestly, a lot of the crying was mostly just shock. It was, my mom was visiting at that time to be there when I had gone through my surgery, and she comes in and tries to console me, but I just needed to cry by myself. I was like, you have to call her. And then, so he calls me, what's going on? And I was like, I cannot talk right now. And it was a personal journey that I had to go through in that moment. Sure. And yeah, so those were the two, before and after. And then the rest of the time I was very focused. Almost like I didn't have time to cry, and I couldn't think. Of course, I worried that I wouldn't make it through certain things, or that or maybe in 5 years the cancer comes back, and mine's an aggressive cancer, and maybe some of it's still somewhere, So of course, that's back of my head, but I didn't cry because I couldn't be afraid. Like I said before, like about the emotional baggage, I did not have time to hold anything on my shoulders anymore. I had to fight the biggest battle of my life. So everything dropped to the ground. And I had to be kind to myself and take care of myself. And then when I got to the other side of the journey, I like looked at all that baggage on the ground. I thought, I don't want to pick that up again. Yeah. I've been able to, if I can beat cancer without this baggage, like I could take on any other little thing that comes up, because everything after that does feel like a molehill. I want to hear this story. I did a lot of research. I did all the research, but I didn't. Of course you did, because you're smarty pants. But the one thing I didn't research was what they would look like. He did show me some befores and afters, and I was shocked at them, because some of them looked really great, and some of them did not. And he was trying to explain to me. What I liked about him is that he was very honest. I like the brutal truth. I don't want anything to be sugar-coated. I want people to tell me exactly what things are. And I think that he, at the end, my end results, I think that he did he did a fantastic job with what he had to do, which is take out all of my breast tissue. And again, it doesn't look like an augmentation. My breast, you can show it. I'll show you later. But it does not, because of my anatomy, my scars are not something that I can really cover up that much. And they're more exposed. Okay, like say your story. I want to hear this story because you did this extraordinary. I mean, aside from just as a woman, but also as your friend, just being grateful to you and so proud of you and how you have stepped forward in talking about this. And I think bringing such awareness. One of our producers was saying that she took the test because of you. That makes me so happy. Yeah. And so I think you've brought so much awareness around the issue and the bravery of talking about your mastectomy too. But then this whole other thing happened. It was like another layer of really kind of, to say owning your story feels cheap in this instance, and I can't think of the right
phraseology, but you were doing a Skims ad, right? And
For Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
right.
Skims and the Susan G. Komen Foundation wanted to do a campaign for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Yeah.
Right. And so you went and because they ended it, you went in with a plan of one thing and came out with a plan of another, right?
Well, that company and the way it's run is fantastic. The group of women that run it is. I walked away saying, this is why they got to 4 billion.
Okay.
So quickly. Like a $4 billion valuation for their company is incredible, and to do it in such a short time. But the women really understand other women, and there was such. They were very focused. They are very creative, and they had an exact point of view of what they wanted. But and at the same time, they were very nurturing and respectful, and you can tell it's run by a celebrity who's in the public eye, because everything was garnered around making me feel comfortable. And a lot of times it's not. It's always like, well, we have an image and we need to get it done, and we're gonna do whatever we can and push you into things you're uncomfortable with, and they pushed 0%. So my makeup artist was there, and she had touched up my mastectomy scars previously for like the Academy Awards events that I had gone to, which was right before I had spoken about my breast cancer. And so she was on set touching them up, and it just was like, it takes a long time, and the lighting, and then it just hit me that I was tired of being insecure about them, because I was really insecure. There are some other spots that I'm insecure about. There are some like where they had to really dig out some tumors. It just caved in some spots. But the mastectomy scar is the big one. And I was like, you know what? I was thinking about all the other women who have the same scars, and that I was probably insecure about them because it's something that so many women are insecure of, and that had kind of got into my subconscious. And I just thought, I'm not, this is going to be proof of how hard I fought. And I'm proud that I fought hard. I fought really hard to be here, and I fought hard for my baby. And I came out the other side dropping a lot of emotional baggage and being kinder to myself. And this was just another moment that I said, I'm not going to carry any more emotional baggage if I have the strength to, because it is strength to let go of that emotional baggage, right? People think that like it's heavy on your shoulders. Why don't you get rid of it? Why don't you just drop it? But you said something earlier, but now this also reminds me of it, is that when you're talking about getting into the same patterns because it's something that you had grown up with, or something that happened to you when you were younger, so you keep doing that because you're familiar with that pain. I had realized that I think of it like bad posture, right? When you have bad posture, your back starts to curve over, and your shoulders come in. And if you try to sit up, it actually feels uncomfortable, and it's kind of painful because your muscles are needing to work. So then if you ignore that pain and you try to move away from that pain, you go back into your hump back, right? And you need to sit up straight to strengthen those muscles. And it's really comfortable to be bent over because that's how you've been living. But if you keep doing that, eventually you will just bend completely over. You'll lose your posture. So you have to do the things that are tough to strengthen yourself so that you are on the right path and standing straight. And that was just another moment when I was like, I'm not gonna carry it. And I wanted to do that for other women who had this, and I wanted to send them so much love, and the response, was incredible.
For the maybe one person listening who didn't see it, the campaign was you proudly letting your scars show.
And again, that was never on any of the creative boards that they had. And I thought of it, and I said to them, I think I'd like to do this. And they
Wow.
went and talked, and they came back and they said, are you comfortable with this? And I said, yes, I'm ready to do it. And they were really compassionate and they were like, I want to make sure, that this is really the path you want to go down. And they also said, and if you don't like it in the end, we'll kill those photos.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just such peace.
Mm-hmm.
And the other women around really understanding what it's like for me, even if they didn't go through it, they understand what it's like to have your breasts taken off of you and then have scars on your body. And it was just such a caring, loving environment.
Oh.
This one guy came up to me at the grocery store, and he had seen it, and he said, my mom has those scars.
Mm.
And I showed her the photo, and it made her feel really good. He goes, it made me always sad to see those scars on my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't feel sad for her.
Oh.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like, sometimes it's the perception of other people looking at you and looking at that scar that
And also sort of, I know for me, or my experience is like somehow being able to use my pain to help ease other people's suffering has probably been the most humbling and gratifying experience of my life, in that way.
I mean, that is so true, because I didn't truly realize that until this. And, the reason is because I've gone through experience in my life that like some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, that I feel could reach out to other people going through it, or help other people try to avoid that situation, or recognize when it's happening. But so many things can be misconstrued. Somebody takes, we do this whole interview, and everybody has good love going out, and then you've got other people taking one little thing that we said and running with that. And that's just part of being in the public eye, and something you have to deal with. But that's a big reason why I was like, man, someone's going to take this and twist it around. And
I know that was like a skill I had to develop too, becoming a public person of that.
And what was that
so
skill?
annoying.
What is that
I
skill?
see that. Well, I don't know that it's a beneficial skill, but it's thinking 10 steps ahead about what you are about to say, and so I find that exhausting. And I think also too, I had another layer of it around, I guess, like really sort of unintended puns or, language that I was concerned about. When I gave my TED Talk, I remember being worried about, I don't know why this is making me emotional. Look what you're doing to me, bringing all my emotion to the surface.
This is what we need. Everybody, I mean,
but I remember they give you those mics that like go on your thing, and I remember being really embarrassed and having to kind of quietly ask the line producer there, like, is there a shadow? And I was really worried that it would look phallic on my face, like a phallic shadow on my face. And so something like that, those are the filters. It's the same kind of a thinking ahead about something, exactly what you're saying about how people take, something out of.
I didn't understand that. And it's something that nobody else would think about, but they would think about it if it did. All of your good intentions would be focused on that.
Yeah.
And I would sometimes tell a joke about something because it was too painful to talk about, or I would and then it could be misconstrued as me being flippant or disrespectful, but you're like, no, there's like sometimes
gallows humor. It's like, if you can't laugh, like you laugh or cry. So I want to ask you something of, it's kind of, it's like a bigger question, and there's another piece of it inside it too. So
I'm ready.
Okay, which is, so I'm really curious about this piece between, well, I guess I'm making an assumption that when you go through something like cancer, you feel like your body's betraying you. And I also am curious about that around if there were any of your experiences that were impacted by the fact that you also have been seen as this, like, sex symbol and a hottie, and was part of then that sort of other piece of it of like part of your
Like identity.
reclaiming your body really in ways, and your identity with the photo shoot and with the ad. Just sort of, did that bring you back to yourself in a different way, or are those completely separate things?
From the beginning, I just took a hold of the opportunities that were given to me. And in the beginning, that was an image that was more sexy. And that was my choice as well. But it's not that I didn't feel sexy. I always felt like it was okay to embrace your sexuality. And now you look at it, because people are so successful off of that. And there are people who started in that world and now, own a $4 billion company, and are on the cover of Vogue and are really embraced by everyone. But at that time, when I started in the public eye, 2006, you could really be one or the other. You couldn't be artistic and respected and also be in a bikini and sexuality that you had. And it became a self-inflicted public identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't have to accept the opportunities, but I did. I never ignored the part of me that could feel sexy. I just never felt that that's all I was. When I got into The Daily Show with Jon Stewart back in the day, there was a little uproar about like, we want more women, but not that woman. And I remember going back to that time, right? If I'm thinking about that time, it was like 2010. And that's kind of when I stopped not embracing my sexuality in that way. I don't think I have to think back, but I wanted to take the opportunity to take my career more seriously and to be more thoughtful about the things that I said. And I knew I was given this amazing opportunity, and I wanted to do my best with it, which is what I always was trying to do,
Yeah. Do you feel like, because we've talked about this before, like both of us having a love for Sloan Sabbath, do you feel like that role actually in a way sort of married, because when I talk about you behind your back, I will say like, you're more like Sloan Sabbath, I think, because you're brilliant. You're really brilliant, really
Not
smart.
Sloan Sabbath brilliant. That's
Well,
I need Aaron Sorkin to write every single thing I say.
Well, I think we'd probably all like that. But
Yes.
do you think that role, because that was sort of where I first saw you as an actor. In fact, it was my mom who told me about the newsroom. She was like, you have to see this Olivia Munn girl.
Aw.
She's beautiful and incredible,
That's
and
so nice.
all those things.
That was Aaron Sorkin's writing, and credit to
I
him.
see so much of you.
No, I would say
knowing
obviously
you.
every actor brings their own thing to
Yeah.
it, but he had to write a character that was there, and the way that I chose to play it is what he saw, and thank God it was that way, because that's the only way I wanted to do it. The pilot episode, which I'm not in, I show up in the second episode, but I was originally in the pilot episode, and the costume designer at the time put me in like really frumpy, like I think it was like a turtleneck and an oversized blazer and beige pantyhose and like a long skirt, and it was really like overwhelming. And the costume designer had said to me, "We need people to take you seriously because you're the smartest person in the building." Sorkin writes that in there, and so we got to have, you can't be seen in a sexy way at all. And it was my first big show, so I didn't say anything. I said okay, and I felt like I looked so like inappropriately like aged, and I was like, this is not okay. And but I did it, and it wasn't until we got picked up to series, and the new costume designer said, "Do you like what you were wearing in the pilot?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, let's start again. What do you want?" And I said, I think about men who are really well dressed, and they're wearing their Hugo Boss suits that's tailored to perfection, and they look handsome. And no one's saying that we don't trust or believe that they're smart. I said, so I would like to wear fitted suits that are tailored to my body. I'd like to look nice, look sharp. I don't want to wear any big flashy jewelry because for me to deliver the news, I didn't want anything to be distracting to the information that my character was giving. That's what I thought my character would do. I thought my character would not wear anything flashy, but she would wear her tailored suits. And because of how I had seen my life play out in the public eye, my number one goal with my character in that second episode, I wanted my first thing we've seen is this big long walk and talk that I have with Emily Mortimer, who I love. And I said, I want people to judge me as soon as they see me.
Wow.
Oh, but then I want them to realize they made a mistake as soon as I start talking, because I have that amazing Sorkin dialogue, you know, and that I could deliver it.
Yeah.
And I knew I could do it. I knew that this was a role I could do, and I knew that I could take on his dialogue. And I had, you know, not a lot of actors.
Brilliantly.
Thank you.
I've always been more of a Mackenzie, but wanting to be more Sloan Savage, but you know.
Well, and you have that kind of writing, and you know, for me, it really spoke to me because Sloan wanted justice, and she wanted things to be right, and what was right was right.
Right. Do you think Aaron saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself yet, that sort of ended up in the character,
I didn't realize how I can kind of go from very serious to like making a joke right away. I just wasn't really thinking about that in the way that I would move through the world, and he really he picked up on that, and he started putting those layers into, like, I'd be in the middle of something that was really upsetting and passionate as the character, and then he would throw in some line that had to bring in some levity, but also had to, my character had to deliver it seriously. He really works really hard to hear how the actors are performing his words, but at the same time, he's very locked in. He's like, this is what I want to put out there, so you need to do it. If you can capture his vision, then you don't get any notes, Wow.
And wait, you had a time where you never got notes?
No.
Okay.
I was about to say this. I'm not a trained actor. Like, I didn't.
Oh, really?
I didn't go to
Okay.
Broadway.
Oh, wait, you went to journalism school,
Yeah.
right? Or not?
No, I went to. I graduated with a BA in journalism.
So did you bring that to bear in the role? Okay.
Yes, because on the Daily Show I played a fake reporter, and on the newsroom I played a real reporter.
You have a new show coming out, Your Friends and Neighbors, on Apple TV.
Yes, it's with John Hamm, Amanda Peet, and this other amazing cast of fantastic actors.
You must have had a great time on set.
I did. I loved it. I've been a big fan of both Amanda and John's for a long, long time. I remember Amanda back when she was on this show called Jack and Jill, and she first came out. And this was do you remember that? But this was a time when we only had 4, maybe 5 networks. So if you're an actor and you get onto one of those, it's a big deal because there's only so many shows.
Yeah.
So I remember watching her and falling in love with her. And she's the best. And then we met, and of course I talked to her about Jack and Jill a lot. And she's like, that is so weird. No one's talking to me about that. But her and I got along so great. And John, this is such a fantastic role for him. And I love working with him so much. He's an executive producer on the show as well. So I know that he had a hand in casting me.
Oh,
yeah. I was the first person cast after they announced him.
Wow.
And so I was a bit nervous because I was like, that's a
and
big
now
pressure.
and the point. So just like timeline wise,
in 2021 I had my son Malcolm, and then in 2023 I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
And then I started filming in April. And in the middle of April, and I had actually gone through my 5th surgery.
Oh my God. How many surgeries in total?
5.
Wow.
And that last one was an oophorectomy and a partial hysterectomy where I had my fallopian tubes and uterus taken out.
Wow.
And that was because the medicine that I would be having to take for 5 years was going to suppress my ovaries, and it was next level
Yeah, I think we
Torturous.
had dinner
Mhm.
actually
I
with
was
John,
struggling.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and you were trying to
Like I was just comatose.
make a decision
Yeah,
about the medicine.
about that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so then I have that, and then, but in January we had already done the embryo transfer with our surrogate.
Okay.
So we knew that the baby was coming and healthy.
Okay.
Yeah, and then by September, May enters the world.
Okay.
My little dragon. You're the dragon.
Yeah. And had you gone public about your cancer before you were shooting this show, or was
Right before.
okay?
Right before.
Okay.
I did tell our creator of the show
Mm-hmm.
about it,
Okay.
and I kind of was like, "Hey, this is what's going on with me. I feel really good. I knew I can do this, but I just wanted to be like, heads up." And his name's Jonathan Tropper, and that was my best experience on a set when it comes to like how
Mm-hmm.
easy and collaborative it is, and how caring everybody was to my situation.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
Thank you so much. I feel like we're sitting on your sofa. I'm like imagining us sitting on the
I
sofa
know.
with the every
Ordering
Thai food.
I will say I'm so surprised.
Uh-huh.
You, Monica Lewinsky, have no crystals in your studio.
I know, because
Was
you
that
know
a
what?
choice?
No, it's what it is that I don't have like a studio. It's sort
You
of
move around?
yeah. So this was
But did they move these chairs
uh-huh.
so they could
In
move a
fact-
crystal?
So
Yeah, guys.
I know.
Way
I
to
know.
break your back on her crystals.
I probably have one in my purse. Well,
Yeah.
actually, I have one for you because
Aw.
I'll give it to you after. I give all my guests a crystal just
Mhm.
as an exchange of energy.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you our final question that we ask everybody. So, like to know, like, is there anything that you're working on reclaiming right now, and that could be, something personal or a physical object, anything that you feel in your life?
Great question. This is cliche, but I think that sometimes things being so cliche, something being said in the world so long, it doesn't really register. You don't really know how to take it in. It just feels like one of those things that people say. But to truly be present, and with my anxiety that I had for so long, realizing that I was never enjoying the day. I was never being present in the day. So every day I was wasting it because I was worried about tomorrow, 2 months, 1 month, a year. And I was regretting things I did the day before and the week before and months and years before would still stay with me. Looking at my 2 babies, and it's difficult when you have to, because my 3-year-old has completely different needs than my 4-month-old, and I'm being torn in 2 different directions. When I was younger, I used to say to myself, what would the 80-year-old me say to the 27-year-old me? Or what would the 80-year-old me say to the 19-year-old me? And like, it would a lot of times, and it didn't mean that I took this advice, but I would be like, get out of this relationship. Don't be so hard on yourself. I would just be like, this doesn't matter. Your whole life is over. Not at 80 or 90, right? Sometimes people get to 100, but I was like, the majority is gone, and you should have just moved on because you're wasting time. And so now every time I get frustrated, which is actually very seldom because I've gone through cancer, and I was so scared I wouldn't make it through for all the reasons. But so the frustration isn't something there, but being tired is something that I experience a lot just from everything I've been through and the medicine I have to be on. But whenever I feel tired, or I'm like, oh, he made this mess, or oh my gosh, like he threw his food and like my new white couch is like decimated, I think about being 80. And if I was granted a time machine to go 40 years back, and they said, we're going to give you 40 years as a gift, you can go back and do it again. That's what I think about every time. And I think I would not be on my phone. I'd be sitting here looking at his little face, looking at her little face. I would say, make the mess. I don't care. I will not remember the mess when I'm 80. I will just want to be here. I want to live every single moment. Every time you throw a fit, I want to experience it. Every time you you want to put on the TV and watch, Daniel Tiger. Like that's fine with me. And every time you want to go, like not like it makes me really realize like how fast life will go and how lucky I would be if I got all this time back. So actually in this moment, I do often think, and I try, and it comes into my mind really instantly. I think, oh, I've just been given 40 years. I've just been given 40 years to do it all over again. Wow. Oh yeah, what are we going to do? So sometimes when I can't help the insecure thoughts that come in, or the worrying that comes in, or will people take this the wrong way, or will they go back and in time and try to put me back into a box? Will I allow myself to be put into that box whenever those thoughts come in? And they do come in, obviously, because it's been how I've viewed myself and thought about for so long, but I push them out right away. And if sitting here today, somebody said, hey, I'm going to give you 20, 30 years to go do it again, we would know how fast it goes by.
Yeah.
And when we were younger, when people would say, oh, it goes by in a blink, it really does. It just does.
Yeah. All right. I'll try and be present more. Also.
Well, I mean, especially for you, you've been in the public eye for so long and had to endure so many things. And I'm so excited for you, for everything. But I met you when I was like blown away that you had started this relationship and career with Vanity Fair, and you really reclaimed your voice, because it is so understandable if you said, I just want to put my head down and never be seen again, because it was just so unfair what happened to you. And you really are taking advantage of every opportunity and being very present. I mean, obviously you and I, we've talked many times about a spiral, but the fact that you're getting up and you're going to work and you're doing these really exciting things is like, that's the first step. If there are some parts of your life that you can't stay in the present for, and that you're holding on to, at least like for you specifically, you are full steam ahead with this other big part of your life.
I'm trying.
Doing fantastic.
Thank you so much, Olivia.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So just a small PS for this episode. After chatting with Olivia, I went and did the breast cancer risk assessment tool myself. I think that's what it's called. If not, just Google Olivia Munn and breast cancer test, and it will come up. And thankfully, my numbers were low, but it was a really great reminder to do something like that. So maybe you also want to too.
I was very used to living the majority of my life in more urban or suburban areas. The first time I lived in a rural area was something quite a bit different. I didn't really have any place left to go after making a bunch of bad choices, so I began talking to an old friend from high school who had moved out of state. He'd lived out in a cabin for a few years, although it wasn't necessarily a cabin out in the woods. It was more the community of various cabins, but it was still a lot more rural than I'd ever experienced before. The cabins weren't extremely close to each other, though. I discovered that when I moved out there. Everything was at least a half-hour drive from the nearest convenience store. I didn't have a car at the time, and obviously didn't have a job right away either when I went out there, so I had to rely on my friend for everything. Whenever he was out at work, I was stuck at the cabin by myself for long periods of time. Of course, it was a huge adjustment for me, trying to get used to living in such an atmosphere. It's not like I could just walk down to the store or order something to eat on delivery. After a period of time, I did discover there was a single pizza restaurant that, although a 40-minute drive away, would still deliver to the cabin. If you recall, I mentioned the convenience store was half an hour away at the beginning of the story. My buddy that I lived with worked at that store, and he worked a late night shift. That meant every nighttime I was home by myself. Although we had DirecTV and internet, I found the days becoming very monotonous. For lack of a better word, I think I'd begun to get cabin fever. Even though I wasn't really hungry that night, I wanted to do something a bit different than usual. I ordered a pizza online, pretty close to the closing time of the place, actually. I was lucky they said they would still make it, and had their delivery driver drop it off with me on their way home from work. The only thing I had to do was wait for it to arrive, which could take a while since they were so far away. One of the many things that I didn't quite understand about living in a rural area for the first time is that I didn't get why everyone seemed to head to bed so early in the evening. Everything in the area was completely pitch dark, pretty early into the nighttime. I was waiting for my pizza to arrive for quite a long time. I was relieved when I noticed a light outside. Taking a look out the window, I noticed a set of headlights pulling into the driveway. I was just waiting for the driver to emerge from the car and bring me my pizza, but for some reason that did not happen. The car just idled in the driveway, sitting there and watching the house. I kept waiting and waiting, but nobody was getting out. I thought I would get out and go up to it. It was too weird, but maybe that was what they were expecting to happen. I opened the door to go outside. I'd barely gotten it open when I noticed a gun being stuck outside the driver's window. I was able to duck back into the house and take cover before a series of gunshots rang out. They impacted the door, and the guy in the car got out. I was looking out the window, and at first he began to walk towards me. Then something happened. We both noticed the lights of another car coming from the road. I heard the man outside curse over and over. He ran back to the car, got in, and drove off before the other car got too close. The car that was coming up the road was the actual pizza delivery driver. He pulled into the driveway and came to deliver the pizza. I told him what just happened and asked if he had a cell phone to call the police. He did so, and even offered to stick around until the police arrived. It turned out my friend had been feuding with a few boys he had bought burgers from. He owed them money, according to them, and he refused to pay. So one of them came that day to collect in a different way. I just got caught up in it. There wasn't a lot I could do, really. I still needed a place to stay, but my friend had a shotgun which he now kept loaded and for me to use if the men never came back. They may have at some point, but they never did while I was there. I was driving home late one night from work. I worked the second shift at a factory that was maybe an hour's drive away from home. This is in rural West Virginia, so sometimes you're forced to travel quite a ways if you want to have a really good job. I didn't mind the long drive so much, really, except on those nights when I was extremely tired from the drive home. On this night, I wasn't particularly worn out, but the drive was still pretty long, and it was mostly all through the hills on my way. I had to pay close attention to where I was going. Having driven so many times before, it wasn't unusual for me to occasionally get a bit lazy when paying attention, and I'd more than once gotten into a close call that could have turned into a nasty accident. On this night, it was the headlights of another car that brought me out of the semi-trance that I was in while I was driving. It wasn't that seeing another car was really that unusual, but this was obviously sitting on the side of the road, since the lights were not moving any closer to me. There wasn't a lot of room on the side of the road either, as many of the roads in the area were barely big enough for two cars to drive past each other. Driving around the corner, if another car behind this vehicle wasn't careful, it was extremely likely they would plow into the car and the resulting accident would be pretty nasty. Because of this, I decided to stop and see if they might need any help. Turned out to be a young lady who had the hood of her car propped up. She held me down to get me to pull over for her. Now, I would have helped anyone who needed the help, but I had to admit to feeling a bit safer with it being a woman. There was a lot less worry about being in danger stopping for her in the middle of the night. I pulled my truck to the side of the road, so it was facing her car directly. That way, I could see much better under the hood, while I tried to figure out what was wrong with her vehicle. She walked up to the hood of my truck and leaned up against it while I was getting out of the car. She remained there as I went and started looking under the hood. I was asking her what had gone wrong with her vehicle, and she was answering, trying to explain it to me. As far as I could tell, though, her answers were not making any sense at all. I just chalked it up at the time to her not understanding much about cars, but while looking under the hood, I was unable to find anything immediately wrong with it, especially nothing that would explain the symptoms she was telling me. I guess I should have expected something when I heard her start walking up behind me, but I was taking her for her word, despite not being able to find anything wrong. All of a sudden, I felt this sharp pain in my side. It was so awful it caused me to stumble and fall. To anyone who's never been stabbed before, it's not like what you see in a movie. You don't get stabbed once, then have a miraculous surge of strength that causes you to fight back. She stabbed me in just the right spot, that it caused me to fall over and not have any ability to fight back at all. That was when she was able to get into my pocket and take my wallet out, before going back to my truck and looking through it. I tried to get up several times, but the pain was too severe, and the muscles in my side were not cooperating. Eventually, she closed the hood of her car, got into it, turned on the road, and then drove away. She left me lying there, barely able to move or do anything. That made everything even scarier. I was expecting some car to come running around the side of the road and accidentally run me over. All I could do was go through the agonizing pain and do my best to crawl over to the truck and climb into it. I was able to do it. It took quite a while and was the most agonizing experience of my life. Eventually, I was able to, though. I slumped down in the truck. The pain was so horrible, I felt myself beginning to pass out. At the time, I began to think I was going to die, and what a horrible, pointless way to die it was. I woke up in the hospital. Someone had seen my truck sitting on the side of the road and stopped to see what happened. They called an ambulance and got me to the hospital. It took a while, but the woman who stabbed and robbed me was eventually arrested anyway. It didn't help me out too much, though, because I was still terrified the entire time I was driving to work. When I was in high school, something really strange happened one time early on in the school day. I remember that I was in class and I left to go to the bathroom. This was something that happened all the time. I left the classroom and started walking down the hallway. When I was nearing the bathroom area, I remember that I suddenly came across this woman who I assumed to be a teacher. She was dressed sort of professional looking. We crossed paths in the hallway. I had never seen her before, though, and I knew most of the teachers at the school. Maybe she was a sub or something? As I was walking by her, she called out to me and asked me where I could find a certain teacher's room. I can't remember the exact name that she said, but it was a name that I had never heard before. Like I said, I knew most, if not all, the teachers in the school, and I told her I had no idea who that was. I kept walking and made my way to the bathroom. I went inside. After being there for less than a minute, I left and went back out to the hallway. Right when I started walking back, though, I heard the announcement for a lockdown over the school speakers. I started walking faster to get back to my classroom. A short time later, I ran into the same woman again. She was wandering the hallway and saw me once more. When she noticed me, she yelled that I was not supposed to be out there. She very confidently told me that I needed to come with her and go to her classroom for the lockdown. I started to say that I was going back to my own classroom, but she interrupted me and said no. She insisted I had to go with her. At that point, I just said okay and started following her. She started to walk very quickly. As we went down the hallway, I couldn't believe how fast she was moving. I was trying to keep up with her the best I could. I really didn't want to go with her, but she wasn't really giving me an option. We went down 2 hallways, and she kept looking back at me like she was trying to make sure I was still following her. Then we headed to the west wing of the school, which I was very familiar with. It was really just the gym and athletics area, as well as some lockers and office spaces. There weren't really any classrooms over there at all. At this point, I was very confused and also growing suspicious. I knew this woman could not have a classroom over here. The longer I followed her, the more that bad feeling got worse and worse. I knew I needed to get away. One time, when she wasn't looking back at me, I decided to just start going back. I stopped and turned around and started sprinting back to my classroom. As soon as I did this, the woman stopped and did a 180 and began to chase after me. I ran as fast as I could, and at first the woman was right on my tail, grabbing at me. I was able to run faster than her, though, and was able to pull away. I kept going and made it all the way back to my classroom. I started banging on the door like crazy, until I was eventually let back in. I told my teacher about what happened, and she made a call to the office. A while later, when the lockdown was lifted, I found out the very same woman who tried to get me to follow her was the cause of the lockdown in the first place. She had entered the school by breaking a window to an empty classroom. I'm not sure what exactly she wanted. She was not a substitute teacher at all, but was apparently posing as one. Why she wanted me to go with her, I have no idea, but I'm really glad I followed my instincts and ran away. That was the only school lockdown in my high school career. It was crazy, and I'm glad nothing like that ever happened again. I remember one really scary experience I had back when I was in high school. I was a sophomore, and I used to ride the bus to and from school every day. One day, there was a pretty typical day of school. I went to all my classes, and nothing strange or unusual happened at all. When the last bell of the day rang at 2:45, school was out, and we could all go home. I remember that this time was always crazy and would be a mad dash to get to the bus on time. A lot of kids went to my school, and in between every class, the hallways would be packed. After school, it was always really rough to walk through the halls and get to the buses. They left at just after 2:50, so you really only had 5 minutes to get there. On this day, I left my classroom and made my way to my locker. I had to get something before going to the bus. This proved to be a big mistake, though, because after literally running through the hallways and getting outside, I saw that I'd missed the departure. I was really disappointed. I lived too far away from the school to walk home, and I didn't have any good friends with cars. I would have to wait for my mom to get off work and give me a ride. Fortunately, my mom got off work at around 3:30 or 4 o'clock usually, so at least I wouldn't have to wait at the school for long, only about an hour or so. After calling my mom, I went back inside the school, not really knowing what I was supposed to do now. I had never actually missed the bus before, and I'd never stayed after school either, unless I had sports practice or something. When I was inside the school, I saw that there were only a few students still inside, mostly a bunch of upperclassmen who could drive themselves home. Within about 10 minutes, the hallways became completely empty, with just me walking throughout them. Now, my school did not really have any places to hang out at all. There were no study areas or couches or chairs or anything like that. Just a series of halls and classrooms, really. I figured I would just wander around the halls while I waited for my mom to come to school. I remember that I walked around for 15 to 20 minutes maybe. I'd made it toward the back end of the school, and things were completely empty there. That's when I heard a sound come over the school speakers, followed by an announcement that there was a lockdown, and this was not a drill. At first, I was very confused. I didn't even know there could be lockdowns when school was not in session. Needless to say, I also didn't really know what I was supposed to do in this situation. Obviously, I did not have a class or a classroom to go to. I looked around all the classrooms I was passing by. All their doors were closed, and they appeared to be empty and already locked up. I kept walking, thinking maybe I should just leave the school altogether. That's when I rounded a corner and saw that way down the hallway was a man wearing all black and a ski mask on his head. I knew that something was up here, and I quickly ducked back around the corner. I saw the bathrooms and quickly ran inside them. Once I was in there, I stopped and listened to see if the person would come after me. I figured the bathrooms were really the only place I could hide for the lockdown. For a minute or two, things were pretty quiet, and I didn't hear anything. Then I started to hear footsteps not too far out in the hallway. They didn't get super close, but they seemed to only be a short ways away. Moments later, I heard a very loud banging sound, like someone was smashing the lockers or something. I didn't know what exactly it was, but it made me feel on edge. These sounds went on for a while, and then after about a minute or so of quiet, I heard more loud banging, followed by the sounds of glass breaking. I no longer felt safe just hiding in the bathroom. When things quieted down a bit again, I knew I needed to get out of there. I carefully went to the entrance of the bathroom and looked out into the hallway. I didn't see anything, indicating the sounds I'd heard must not have been within my line of sight. I quickly left and ran to the opposite direction from where I'd heard those noises. I ran all the way until I got to the front of the school. When I got toward the lobby, I saw a police officer who seemed surprised to see me. I quickly told him I'd seen a guy in a ski mask. Another officer who had entered the school told me to go outside the front door, and they would handle it. I went out where several police cars were waiting. The police went inside, and my mom got there a short time later. I was able to go home with her. There were a bunch of police cars outside, and police in the school. At that point, I went home and heard about the rest on the news. The police ended up finding the guy inside and catching him. He had walked inside wearing a black mask after hours, obviously suspicious, and he got reported. I guess he just went around causing a bunch of damage to the school grounds, breaking windows to classrooms, breaking various equipment. That must have been the loud noises I was hearing. It was a very scary situation, and I'm glad I was able to get out of it unharmed. This happened just this summer. My best friend Jonah and I are both in college and are outdoorsy kind of people. We'd go on hikes and sometimes go out camping when we had the chance as well. This year, when classes were out for the summer, we made plans to go camping by a lake that was a couple hours away from us. Now, it would be fair to say we weren't exactly experts at camping, but we also weren't entirely clueless either. We knew what we were doing at least, and didn't stay any longer than what we knew would be safe. We set out on the trail in the morning, prepared for 2 full nights out there. The hike took a bit longer than it was supposed to, but we got to the lake around midday. From what I know, there are hundreds of trails leading to this lake because of how big it is, and there were so many places to camp that it was extremely unlikely to run into anyone else. We didn't want to have to talk to other people, so when we arrived and saw nobody else was there, we were feeling quite good about things. The first hour, we just sat down and rested from the long hike. Then we put up our tents in the tree line, just outside range of the beach. By then, the sun was setting, so Jonah got a fire going, and I went out to collect some dry sticks to keep it running. I picked up a few not too far from our tents. when I suddenly began to hear a noise from just in front of me. I lifted my eyes and looked ahead. It was getting dark, but I could still see most of the woods. Pretty far back, there looked to be a person or something. After looking for a couple more seconds, I was able to see them distinctly walking and confirmed it was definitely a person out there in the woods. I quickly walked back to the campsite and told Jonah about it. We weren't exactly afraid or anything. It was just a little bit weird for someone to be out here wandering in the exact place we were. I think we also would have had a different feeling if they were just walking along the beach, but instead they were just wandering through the woods, not even on a trail. 15 minutes went by, and the sun had now passed the horizon, covering the woods in darkness. That's when we heard footsteps approaching. A moment later, a man appeared in the light from our campfire. He looked to be in his 30s, with a beard and shoulder-length hair. I immediately got a bad feeling about him. He smiled at us from across the campfire, then asked us if we knew the way to a specific place. I didn't recognize the name of it, but it sounded like a trail's name. "Sorry, we're not too sure where that is," I said. The man kept his smile and looked at us for another moment before turning around and wandering back into the woods. He didn't say anything else. I looked over at Jonah. Both of us were equally mystified and unnerved. After we were sure he was gone, Jonah asked me if that was the same person I'd seen before. I couldn't be 100% sure, but I was fairly confident it was. We spent the rest of that night by the fire, trying to think of reasons the man would be out there like that. The only thing that would make somewhat sense was if he got desperate for help once the sun went down and he was lost or something. But that man didn't seem desperate at all. He asked for directions like everything was normal. He also wouldn't have just left after asking one question, right? Both of us were getting a little freaked out, so we let the conversation die out. Once it was getting closer to bed, we let the fire burn out as well, then climbed into our tents. I tried sleeping, laying there for at least an hour, just listening to the sound of the woods. There was this weird feeling I was getting, though, that wouldn't let me close my eyes for too long without getting nervous. After somewhere around 2 hours of laying awake, I heard it. Footsteps sneaking towards our tent. I yelled Jonah's name and rushed out of my tent. I looked into the woods. A figure was standing 10 feet from me. A second later, they turned around and sprinted back into the woods, being hidden by the darkness. Jonah came out only in time to hear their footsteps running away. He said he knew exactly what was going on, though. We packed up that night and waited tiredly for dawn to make our way out of those woods. We don't know who that man was or why he was seemingly wandering so far out there with no equipment. If I hadn't stayed awake through the night, we may have never left those woods at all. I worked at a restaurant with my older brother during our high school years. It was a really small restaurant in an outlet shopping center. We were both waiters there, but since the place was small, we often helped out all around, doing dishes, deliveries, whatever they needed really. After just a year of working there, my brother graduated high school and chose to go to college. He quit working there, but I stayed for a while. This happened a few months before I eventually left the job. It was Friday, so I was working a later shift than I usually did on other weekdays. The restaurant was open until 12 every night, but because of school, I usually never stayed late, no later than 8 or 9. Anyway, I was scheduled to close this night, alongside the manager. Everything was going pretty normal, slowing down by 8 and getting a few people picking up orders for the rest of the evening. At 10:30, my manager picked up a phone call for a delivery, though. By 11 p.m., I was driving out of the parking lot and out onto the road. The address I was given on the receipt was just 8 minutes away from the store. As I drove a couple minutes down the road, I got a call from my manager. I answered right away, thinking they must have canceled, but apparently the guy had called back saying he'd given the wrong address on accident. I pulled over and wrote down the new address. I typed in the new street into GPS, but right away I knew something was off here. It wasn't close at all. It was 25 minutes away, in the opposite direction of where I'd been going. If they had given this address to begin with, the order would have never been accepted this late. I thought about just going back to the restaurant and telling my manager, knowing he would understand. But I was already out there, and we had already taken the order, so I just started driving. The roads were pretty empty around town at this time of night. The further out I drove, the more desolate they became. I didn't even see any cars for the last 5 minutes of the drive. This was taking me out to the far edge of town, where most of the buildings and houses turned into grassy fields and lines of trees. When I approached the road the address was on, all I could see were a row of houses with all the lights off. As I drove down and passed more of the houses, a few of them did have their porch lights on, but it still felt like a very empty area. It's worth mentioning these were not the nicest houses either, by any means. They were all single-story box-style homes. I pulled up to the one I was set to deliver to, and parked on the side. Getting out with the food, I felt a strange, eerie sense as I walked up to the door. It was quiet outside. There were no streetlights, and barely any house lights. It was extremely dark in this area. I knocked on the door and waited while a whole minute passed by. There was no sign of anyone being home. I was starting to get more and more uneasy. I just set the bag down and turned to walk back to my car. They hadn't paid yet, but the food was probably cold already, and it was of no use to me anyway. When I looked over at my car, though, a man was standing right behind it. He was leaned over like he was looking into the window. I stopped in place. I don't know if the man heard me approaching or what, but he immediately looked up at me. I could barely make out his face, but he was an older man. "Do you need something?" The man didn't move. I asked again, but nothing changed. That eerie sense was getting stronger. I looked around, but I didn't see anything other than trees in the dark. The man took a few steps back, moving away from my car and standing maybe 5 feet from the door. After a moment, I started walking over slowly, hoping to just get in and leave. As I got right up to the door, the man continued to stare at me from just a few feet away. I cautiously opened the door and rushed inside, but before I could even turn it on, the guy started yelling. I looked over at him, seeing him now facing the woods and just screaming gibberish. I turned my head slightly to look where he was looking. In the woods, I could see 2 or maybe even 3 figures rushing toward my car. My immediate thought was that this was a setup, and I needed to leave instantly before something happened. I turned my car on and shot out of there, just as the man next to me tried to move behind my car in an attempt to stop me. I was able to get out. Seeing and hearing the group of men yelling at me, I sped away. The cops were called, and though not much was able to be found, there were a few things. The address I was supposed to deliver to was apparently a vacant property. It wasn't technically abandoned, but the owners didn't even live in the state anymore. It wasn't for sale either. It was just left as is, rotting away for the past decade. The caller that placed the order was unknown, but the initial address he gave seemed to have no significance. Who the group was, what they planned to do, so many other things are left with no resolution. I'll probably be wondering about it for the rest of my life. After all, had anything played out a little bit differently, I may not even be here right now. It was about, I want to say, 7 to 8 years ago. I was living in an apartment complex doing online college courses while trying to help a friend start up a business. It fell through eventually, but that's neither here or there. It was about 3 a.m. I was still writing a paper when I heard someone pull up to the building and into the parking lot. I looked out to see a truck. Nothing special. I kept on writing. A few moments later, though, I heard a desperate screaming. I looked out, and this lady was next to the truck that just pulled in, screaming and spinning in a circle with the driver's side door open. She's got her hands up near her hair, waving them around. I thought to myself, Wasp must have gotten into the truck or something, and she's freaking out. It didn't trip any mental alarms. I saw this guy running up to her, and thought, oh, I guess a friend is arriving to help. I turned back and tried to remember where I was in the paper. About a minute later, though, I started hearing a noise I knew very well. Metal on concrete. As a kid, when playing baseball in the street, I liked to bash my bat against the street a few times and pretend to swing before having my friend throw the ball. I heard it again over and over. I looked out and noticed the guy was now bashing what looked like a random spot on the concrete behind someone's car. My weird shish alarm was now going off, and without any personal context, I called my roommate to see if he was noticing this too. By the time we got to looking out again, the noise had stopped. We were instead treated to what looked like vehicular vandalism as a car pulled out of a space opposite my building, pulled closer to the cars on my row, and scraped their sides real slow before racing off. I noticed the door to the truck was still open. At this point, I felt compelled to figure out what was going on. Outside, I crawled out as I approached the truck. I saw the prone form of a woman pushed up under it. Once I saw all the blood, it clicked together. Somebody had ambushed her, beat her to death with a blunt metal object, and ran her over for good measure. I had just witnessed someone's brutal murder without even realizing it. I immediately yelled to my roommate to call 911, as he was the only one who had enough sense to bring a phone. I answered a ton of questions to the cops, and even ended up testifying it. Someone on the other side of the building had seen more, but I was apparently the only one to actually go out there to call the cops. It haunted me for months. Sometimes I'd hallucinate a little, thinking I'd see her mutilated body sitting in the back of my car through my mirror. These days, if I hear anything weird going on outside my house, I check or immediately call the cops if it sounds dangerous. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any feedback for me as well, be sure to leave that in comments below the video. If you guys have a story you'd like to send in, or if you'd like to contact me for any reasons, there will be links to my social media in the description below the video, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has one, and how you'd like to be credited in the description below the video. Please make sure to include as much detail as you feel comfortable with, and try to use as much proper grammar as possible to make sure you have the highest chance of appearing in a future video. Overall, I think that's pretty much it for now, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Mm,